Hi everyone, welcome to my channel Bibbity Bobbity Books. My name is Ellie and today I'm so excited to be filming a reading wrap up. So I am going to be chatting you through all of the books that I read in the last 2 months. So I quite like to do bi-monthly reading wrap ups here on my channel just because I'm quite a slow reader and I feel like that way I've got quite a decent amount of books to chat you through. So yeah, I've got quite a few books to go through today and there's quite a mix as well. So hopefully this is going to be a nice variety. But without further ado, I'm just going to jump straight in and start talking you through all of the books that I read in April and May. Okay, so the first book that I picked up was The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea by Axie Oh. So this is a gorgeous young adult fantasy book that's based on Korean mythology. And in this book we follow our main character Mina, who is a young girl who lives in a village which is ravaged by these really deadly storms. And her people think that these storms are the result of a curse that has been placed upon them by the sea god. And so they sacrifice a young maiden to the sea god every year in an attempt to appease him. Now this book kicks off on the day that Shim Cheong, the most beautiful girl in the village, is due to be sacrificed to the sea god. However, Mina's brother is actually in love with Shim Cheong and so he tries to intervene and to save her, and in a dramatic turn of events Mina ends up throwing herself into the sea in Shim Cheong's place in order to save her brother, and she ends up being whisked away to the spirit realm where she finds out that everything isn't quite as she expected. Now I've heard quite a lot of people liken this book to the Studio Ghibli movie Spirited Away, and I can absolutely see why, because it definitely has a very similar tone to that movie, particularly in the beginning half of the book. And yeah, I really enjoyed the setting of the spirit realm in this story. The only thing I would say is there's something about the writing that didn't quite click for me. I felt like it was missing that wow factor, and I just wanted a little bit more from the descriptions of the setting and the world building, just because I was so fascinated by the spirit realm and I just really wanted a little bit more from the writing. I definitely would describe this as a plot-driven book. It definitely throws you straight in with the action and I found it to be quite fast-paced, which I do think would appeal to quite a lot of readers. One thing that I really did enjoy about this book was the themes of family and storytelling, because our main character Mina is very much motivated by her love for her family and the fact that she wants to save her people, and she's also very much inspired by and influenced by the stories that she was told as a child, particularly by her grandmother, which I thought was just really sweet. So I loved those themes in this book. There's also quite a big romance plotline in here, which I did enjoy, although again I do wish we just had a little bit more page time between the two characters so we could really become fully invested in their love story. So yeah, all in all, I had fun with this book. I definitely think it would appeal to a younger audience, maybe on the youngest end of the YA category. But yeah, it was very whimsical and it was such a creative setting and it was really quick and easy to get through. So yes, I would recommend this if that sounds interesting to you. Also, it's got the most gorgeous cover. Okay, so the next book that I picked up is a little bit of a change of pace, and that is Dead Silence by S.A. Barnes. So this is a science fiction horror novel, and this was pitched as the Titanic meets The Shining, which I actually think is a really accurate description for this book. And yeah, I had a really fun time with this one. So in this story we follow Claire and her crew, who are out on their final repair mission out in space, when they end up picking up this distress signal and they decide to go and investigate it. And it turns out that this distress signal is coming from this huge luxury space cruiser which actually went missing about 20 years ago. And so Claire and her team decide to board the ship and to investigate further and to kind of do a bit of a salvage mission, and some strange stuff and scary stuff starts to happen from there. That's all I'm going to say because I don't want to give any spoilers away, but what I will say is definitely check out the content warnings for this one because it gets pretty dark pretty quickly, and our author definitely doesn't shy away from the really graphic descriptions and the graphic scenes in here, so just be warned of that one. But yes, this one definitely kept me on the edge of my seat. I also quite enjoyed how we had 2 timelines in here. So we have present day, which is when Claire is in a rehabilitation centre and she's being interviewed about what happened to her and her crew when they found this luxury cruiser, and then we've also got a flashback, which is what actually happened when her crew went on board this ship. So yeah, I thought this was really fun and creepy and disturbing and all the things that you want from a horror book. I also love the setting because the luxury cruiser is actually designed to look like an old Earth ship, so it's literally like the Titanic out in space, which I think is such a fun idea and setting for a horror book. And yeah, I really enjoyed this one. The only thing I would say is that the science fiction elements were a little bit lacking, or were a little bit light in this book. So I feel like if you're a big science fiction fan, then you might be a little bit disappointed by this one, because the author definitely focuses more of her attention on the horror elements rather than the sci-fi. So just keep that in mind if you're thinking about picking this one up. But yes, I would recommend it if you're looking for something really, really creepy. The next books that I picked up were actually the Heartstopper series by Alice Oseman. Now, I read all of these graphic novels on Webtoon online. I literally ate them up. I just read one after the other because I couldn't put them down, and I just loved this story so much. But because I literally devoured all 4 of these graphic novels in almost one sitting, I don't have a very clear distinction in my head between the different ones. So I'm just going to review this series as a whole. But yes, as I'm sure you can tell, I really enjoyed this series because as soon as I read it on Webtoon, I literally went out and bought the physical copies because I wanted to have them for my collection. But what is Heartstopper actually about? So this is a young adult graphic novel series that follows a romance between our main characters Nick and Charlie, and it's got a really sweet art style in here, and it's just such a wholesome graphic novel series. So in this series we've got Charlie, who's actually openly gay, and then we've got Nick, who always assumed that he was straight until he met Charlie, and so then he's having to sort of question his sexual identity. And this graphic novel series just talks about all of the complexities of being a teenager and falling in love for the first time and discovering your sexual identity and coming out to your friends and family and solidifying your friendship groups, and it's just so well done in my opinion. It also talks about some difficult things that a lot of teenagers face, like bullying and struggling with mental health issues. But what I really enjoyed and really appreciated about this series is that it is ultimately incredibly positive and really uplifting, and I think that is so important and really wonderful to have a series that is targeted at younger people, to show them that of course you can have a fairy tale romance if you're not straight, and of course you can have a really positive school experience if you are anything but straight. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. I loved how inclusive it was, and I also really enjoyed how it talked about how it's not your sole responsibility as someone's partner to fix them or to, you know, help them if they're struggling with a mental health issue. It explained that it's also really important to talk to your friends and your family and your teachers and a professional if you're struggling with these kinds of issues. So I really appreciated that message in here. So yeah, I would highly recommend this graphic novel series to you if you haven't yet picked it up. It is so good. You will really enjoy it, I'm sure. However, I will say do check out the content warnings in here though, because there are some potentially triggering issues that are discussed in here, including mental health issues and eating disorders, bullying, that kind of thing. So just be warned of that before you pick these ones up. But yes, a gorgeous graphic novel series. Okay, the next book that I picked up was Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Su Lin Tan. So this is a adult fantasy book that's based on Chinese mythology. It's the first in a new duology, and I did really enjoy this one. I have actually already filmed a spoiler-free book review video for this, so if you want to know my full in-depth thoughts and feelings about this book, I will link that video down below, because I'm going to try and keep this one fairly brief. In this story we follow our main character Xing Yin, who's being hidden from the celestial emperor on the moon until one day she accidentally flares her magic, and she is then forced to flee her home and to flee her mother for her own safety. Now, one thing that I immediately loved about this book was the gorgeous writing style, because Su Lin Tan has such a lyrical and poetic writing style that was just so wonderful, and I think it was really fitting for this kind of mythology retelling because it felt very much like a fairy tale, which is definitely up my street. I also really liked our main character and seeing her grow from being quite a naive young girl to being a really determined and strong young woman who will you know, go to great lengths to be reunited with her mother. She had such a lovely character arc. There's also quite a big romance plotline in here, and it contains a love triangle, which is something that I'm not normally a fan of, but I actually thought that it was done really well in this story, and I did really enjoy the romance elements in here. But yeah, all in all, I really enjoyed this story. I thought it was so gorgeously written, loved the setting, and would highly recommend this to you if you're looking for a really whimsical fantasy book. And I also think that this would be a really great transition book if you're looking to move from young adult work to adult work, because I think there were quite a lot of themes in here that would appeal to a younger audience. We had a coming of age story, and we also had quite a big romance plot line, and I feel like those are the kinds of things that you tend to see in YA books. So yes, I really enjoyed this one. I thought it was really beautiful. The next book that I picked up was The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. So this is a very popular adult contemporary romance book that I saw everywhere online. It's been all over BookTok and BookTube and Bookstagram. So I decided to give it a go for myself to see what I think, and I did have fun with this one. I can definitely see why it has been so popular online. So this is a romance book that's set in a university, and it follows the love story between a college professor and a PhD student, and it has a fake dating trope in there, which is a trope that I do enjoy in my romance. And the college professor is actually known for being the most hated professor on campus, and then we've got our PhD student who is quite a spunky character. So we also have that kind of grumpy sunshine element in here as well, which I know that a lot of people really enjoy. So yeah, I did enjoy the tropes in here. I thought the setup for the whole fake dating situation was a little bit silly, but I was willing to suspend my disbelief. And yeah, I really enjoyed the chemistry between the two characters. I also really enjoyed the university setting. I actually thought it was quite a realistic description of what it's like to be in a university and to work in a university, because there's quite a lot of discussions about how you have to work really long hours for very little pay if you're doing research as a PhD student, and it just felt quite relatable. So I really enjoyed the setting. The only thing I would say is that I found the sex scene a little bit awkward for some reason, and I don't really know why. It just wasn't doing it for me, which I think is a shame, because I really enjoyed the sexual tension between the two characters and the build up to that moment. But yeah, there was just something about the actual sex scene that I wasn't 100% vibing with. But all in all, I thought this was a really fun, light romance, and I would recommend this to you if you're looking for something quick and easy and, you know, fun and fluffy to pick up. Also, fun fact, I didn't actually realise that this was a Kylo Ren and Rey fan fiction book until I was reading the actual story, and I was hearing the description of the professor, and I kept picturing Kylo Ren, and I was like, that's so weird. And then I later on found out that this was actually originally written as a fanfic between those two characters, which I think is quite funny. So if you're a fan of Kylo Ren, you might want to try this book. The next book that I picked up was Cersei by Madeline Miller. So this is a Greek mythology retelling that focuses in on the character of Cersei. So Cersei is the daughter of the sun god Helios, but she didn't inherit any of Helios's powers, and she also didn't inherit any of her mother's beauty or her mother's allure. So she's seen very much as a lesser god, and she's very much treated as so. She's at the bottom of the pecking order, and she has a very difficult upbringing because of that. She's got a very strained relationship with her family and with the other gods around her, and so she ends up turning to the realm of the mortals to seek companionship, and it's there that she discovers she does actually have powers of her own. She has the power of witchcraft. Now, witchcraft is actually very rare among the gods, and it's also very powerful, and so she becomes quite a threat to Zeus, who ends up banishing her to this deserted island for the rest of her days. And so she goes to this island, and when she's there, she ends up kind of honing her witchcraft powers, and she lives among the animals. And we stay with our main character Cersei through many years as she's witnessing other famous events that happen happen throughout Greek mythology. And yeah, this is a really beautifully written story. There's absolutely no denying how wonderful and gorgeous Madeline Miller's writing is in this book. However, I would say that for me the story felt very slow. So I think that's in part because I'm not hugely familiar with Greek mythology, and so it did take me a while to get my head around all the different characters. But also the plot is very meandering. We're literally just sitting with our main character as she experiences her life, and it takes place over a huge amount of time, bearing in mind that Cersei is a god. And yeah, for me there was just something about the plot that didn't really hook me. It wasn't until the kind of very end of the story that things kind of picked up for me, and so for that reason I found that when I was actually physically reading the book I was having a fantastic time because I was really enjoying the writing, but as soon as I put it down I just wasn't motivated to pick it up again. So I feel really conflicted about this book, but yeah, as I keep saying, the writing is gorgeous, the setting is also fantastic. I really enjoyed all the descriptions of the island that Cersei ends up on and of all the creatures and her connection to nature, and I think this would be the perfect book to pick up in summer because we have lots of gorgeous imagery of the sea and the ocean and the flowers that Cersei uses for her potions and things like that. So I think if you enjoy a lyrical, slow-paced book and you're a fan of Greek mythology, I think that you would really enjoy picking this one up this summer. Okay, so the next book that I picked up was The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. So this book actually won the most votes on my video that I did where I was asking you for advice on which new series to start this month. So thank you so much for voting. This is the first book in a grimdark fantasy series. It's multi-POV and it follows a whole cast of really interesting morally grey characters, and the characters are definitely the high point for me in this book. I would definitely describe this as a character-driven story. So we've got loads of really interesting people in here. We've got Glocta, who is a disabled ex-war hero turned torturer who now works for the King's Inquisition. We've got Logan, who is a northern barbarian who is trying to escape his dark past. We've then got Giselle, who is a very entitled nobleman who's quite unlikable, but he's also a really famous fencer. And we've got Bayaz, who is this really powerful mage. And we also have Pharaoh, who is a former slave who is out for vengeance. So yeah, it's a really cool cast of characters. I really enjoyed all of them. My favourites are probably Glocta and Logan, if I had to pick, but they're all very interesting. And yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I also liked the grimdark setting. It's very gritty and has everything that you would expect from that genre. But what I also really enjoyed was how Joe Abercrombie included some dark humour in this story as well, which I think was needed to lift it a little bit and to offset some of the darker themes and the kind of gritty, grisly setting. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. I particularly enjoyed being inside Glocta's head and hearing his kind of sarcastic thoughts and things. I thought that was really humorous, and yeah, I really enjoyed this one. So I would highly recommend if you're looking for a grimdark fantasy series to start. Okay, and the final book that I ended up picking up was actually the first book in the Lord of the Rings series by J.R.R. Tolkien. So that is The Fellowship of the Ring, and I really enjoyed this one. I'm sure you're all very familiar with this story already, so I'm not gonna give you a full synopsis, but essentially we're following our main character Frodo, who is a hobbit who ends up inheriting this really powerful dark magic ring, and he has to go on this really dangerous journey to try and destroy this ring in order to stop it from getting into the hands of the Dark Lord Sauron. So yeah, I reread the first book in this series, and I actually listened to it on audio, and I also read along as well and tabbed some bits and pieces as I went, and I really enjoyed consuming this story in that way. I actually listened to an unofficial audiobook for this one, and it was done by a man called Phil Dragash, and he does such a fantastic job. I'll try and link his website down below if I can find it, because I would highly recommend recommend for you to go and check out his version because he does such a great job. He literally includes music from the movies into his audiobook, and he does such a great job at impersonating the different characters, and he also sings some of the songs, which I think is so fantastic. And yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I found it very comforting, I think because it's a very familiar story to me, and in particular because this first book we spend a lot of time in the Shire and kind of traveling through the Shire, and we get lots of gorgeous descriptions of the nature and the scenery, and I feel like a lot of the darker stuff hasn't happened yet, so this felt like quite a comforting read to me. I mean, the world building in this story is just sensational, and the characters are all fantastic, and yeah, it's just such a classic, isn't it? So yeah, really enjoyed that. So that brings me to the end of this video. I really hope that you've enjoyed this reading wrap up. Let me see if I can try and pick up this stack of books. So these were all of the books that I managed to read in the last couple of months, which I think is actually quite good going for me. Please let me know if you've read any of these books before and what you thought of them. I'd love to have a chat with you in the comments, or if you're thinking of picking up any of these books after watching this video, please do let me know. And yeah, I guess I'll see you next time with another video. Bye!